What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the overall market, what's coming out for tomorrow, and also break down SPY for you guys in a very brief video. I can't really go into any specific details because I'm having some very big Wi-Fi issues. This is happening because of the fact that I have no power, and I'm actually only using my hotspots to connect to the Wi-Fi. I have no power because there's a very big storm outside of where I am, and it actually killed our power. So it's very unfortunate, but I'm going to do my best to still upload this video and help you guys as much as I can. Now, before I break anything down, though, and talk about why tomorrow is going to be, a very interesting day as we have PPI coming out and very interesting volatility for SPY, I have to mention a couple of things real quick. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 7 free stocks, and any could be a free Tesla share. It's an unlimited time offer. The offer ends in just 2 weeks. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So when it comes to the overall market, we actually saw a very nice gap to the upside to start us off, and we saw SPY continue to keep going. Now, I mentioned to you guys that if SPY broke the upper resistance around this 390 level, the next major level is around this 393. We did actually break above it temporarily, but then we did get stopped as the day went on, and we ended up seeing a very big rejection. And instead of actually bleeding very, very hard, we did bleed as time went on, but the market bounced during the last hour, and we got a very big bounce from this like 387 level going all the way up to about 392 almost. And we did actually see a green close on SPY. So now we're starting to see more buying pressure and algos starting to kick in. But the real question is, will this last tomorrow? And the answer is, I can't promise anything because just like today, tomorrow is going to depend heavily on the PPI report that comes out. So what is PPI and how does all of this work? To start us off, let's talk about CPI. Overall, CPI was not necessarily horrible, but it wasn't great either. All right, inflation is still hot. We're still up about 6% from a year ago, but what the numbers we got were actually in line with expectations. And that's what the market essentially wanted, and this is why the market ended up holding up quite well throughout the day. Now, the real question is this a good sign for like the more longer term? And the answer is, to some degree, yes, but at the same time, no. And why do I say that? Well, I don't know what's going to happen over the next couple of months with inflation. There could be another uptick because of the summer coming, and we do tend to see that, especially during the month of May. That does tend to happen historically, but there's no guarantee it's going to happen that way, right? But as of right now, if we don't worry too much about summer, we just talk about the data we have so far. So far, there is a sign that inflation is starting to slow down a bit. We're actually seeing more and more signs that suggest that. Gas prices are coming down compared to where they were last year. And on top of that, we're actually seeing a continuation of the decrease in inflation overall relative to before. The peak appeared to be last year during the month of June. So hopefully we don't see another peak like that. And I would just like to see more progress perpetuate. When it comes to the banks, the bank situation is not necessarily done with just yet. And that's because of the fact that Powell and the Fed did step in. They're not going to use taxpayer dollars after all, so at least as of right now, to help pay for the damages that were done. Instead, they're going to be using alternative investments from the FDIC to sell assets, use the assets to help funnel what has been happening, and actually allocate the risks for depositors. That's what the plan basically is. They're going to use money from their own assets, from the FDIC, to essentially help depositors. But there's no guarantee that this just like fixes all the problems, because the problem is a lot of these banks were buying into bonds which have lost so much value as interest rates went up and the yields ended up increasing. So this hurt the treasuries, this hurt the bonds, and once again, a lot of banks are still over leveraged into riskier assets. So the finance part of America is actually taking hits. We actually saw JP Morgan barely in the green, but overall, it is not necessarily safe. And because of that, there is a high risk of more downside to come in the future. Now, we have good news at least for everyday Americans in a way, and that is CPI is starting to show some signs of slowing down a bit. Some signs as of right now. If the data was like way too hot, the Fed would have had to be like way more hawkish and giving us like 50 basis points. But now that it's like in line with expectations, 25 basis points during the next FOMC meeting is on the table. It is very possible. And I don't necessarily think the Fed is going to pause. That would be a little bit surprising to me. And I don't think we're in a position where they should pause because CPI, yes, even if there is somewhat of a sign that it's declining a bit, there's no guarantee it's out of the water. There's no guarantee that we're done with it because of the fact that it's still high. And Powell said as long as it's well above their 2% target, they're going to keep on raising rates. So I do believe the Fed is going to raise rates again, give us maybe 25 basis points. And until then, we'll just have to be ready for it. But the bigger picture right now in the markets is the market is shifting away from inflation, and now it's focusing on the effects of the rate hikes and what's happening to the banks right now. If everyday Americans are losing faith in the banks, how are businesses going to thrive? How are Americans going to survive? The Fed is trying to avoid a bank run. So far, they're helping, but what's going to happen when bigger banks start to take bigger hits? We saw the second and third largest bank collapses since 2008. There's likely going to be more downside in the markets coming forward. This overall structure is more in favor of the bears, at least when you zoom out way more. But I also mentioned to you guys that we had a bullish divergence. This is starting to play out a little bit on the RSI. The RSI obviously made the higher low, price made the lower low, and we're pushing up. All right. But the question is, could we keep going? This is going to depend heavily on PPI. I believe PPI is likely going to be very close to expectations. Right here, year over year is expected to be 5.4%. For core, it's expected to be at about 5.2%. I believe it's going to be very close. Could be a little hot, who knows, but very, very close to what the expectations are based off what we saw from CPI. That's my guess. I believe we might see the market actually try to break above this resistance, and we're likely going to fail, and the market's going to come down very fast and fill this gap. I think SPY is going to come down to fill this gap by tomorrow, come down to 385, then get a really nice bounce because they're going to artificially continue to pump her. That's what I think is going to happen. I can't promise anything, and you should be prepared for anything. If you're really bearish, we have to break below 385 and then come all the way down to 380 and fail. If you're bullish, we have to break above 393, get to 396, and then break above that, we could get to 401 to 400. That's the bullish case, and I just told you the bearish case. But what I think is going to happen is, my guess is, and I'm using the word guess because I don't know what PPI is going to be. So expect lots of volatility in the morning, but I think the market's going to come down to fill this gap. SPY is going to fill the gap down here, then try to bounce. And I think we're going to just try to see a bounce because of quadruple witching. Why is that important? Well, look at how we ended the day. Notice how we were dropping. SPY went from 393, crashed all the way down to 387. That's like almost a $7 drop. Then we got a huge bounce in the last hour, and we closed almost at 392. Why? Because they're artificially pumping the markets again. They're trying to hold the markets up, get lots of retail in there. We're seeing Tesla pump. We're seeing so many stocks pumping so that they could reverse us later on. And also because of quadruple witching. We have 3 million puts expiring for SPY. They're likely going to try to hold the markets up and maybe even try to pump us a bit. So I'm seeing, once again, SPY filling this gap tomorrow, getting to the mid 380s, then bouncing later on, and it might try to retest this trend line in the 390s, and maybe later during the week we might continue to pump. Maybe we could break 393. If we break 393, that's going to confirm more bullish outlook, but right now we have to see the break first to confirm it. So that's what I'm essentially seeing. Now, because a lot of these stocks that people love, especially retail, are still holding up, we're still seeing the QQQ hold up, and the QQQ is retesting this major resistance line. We do have this gap right here in this 291 area. I don't know if QQQ is going to cool off a bit, maybe get a rejection, then try to break and try to get back to 300. That's very possible. We might see this thing be a little weak in the morning, then slowly get a nice bounce. And overall, it's still respecting these higher lows. It has a very strong trend so far. We could even draw out a little like channel. I think a trend channel that looks like this. And in my opinion, we're going to likely continue to see the QQQ hold up. Now, with this relative strength and the amount of strength that this thing is showing us, I believe that it might try to continue to hold this trend. We could try to break down and retest the upper trend line, which would come like right about here, into like the mid 290s. Then get a bounce. We might try to fight this trend line, try to break above it. This is where the major resistance has been for quite a while. They might pump it to get everyone excited. We might see this tomorrow. All right, so I'm anticipating a bit of a cool off in the morning, and we might try to break above this. We're going to fight for it. If we could break it, will depend on PPI and other factors. But until then, just remain calm, cool, and collected. Do what you have to do. And remember, if we can't hold 295, then there is the gap way down here at 291. Just be very patient in the meantime. But I'm sorry, guys. I'm hoping that these charts could load. If they don't load, then there's only so much I could do. For Tesla, this thing got a breakout out of this resistance zone. I mentioned to you all that I think Tesla could get a breakout. And we have this gap around this 187 zone. I think Tesla might try to get that gap fill very, very soon. We might cool off in the morning. We could come down to fill this gap first. This could come like maybe later on. We might see Tesla at least cool down to about 180, maybe a little lower, before we do see a bullish continuation later on. And I'm essentially seeing that for the future. So with that said, I want to thank each and every one of you so much for listening. I am very sorry I can't go into the full details about every stock because I know the more I click on them, the more they just start to lag. And it's going to cause my whole screen to lag. I could just try a couple more. The dollar index, this is actually pretty flat right now, getting very close to a major support. Uh, as of right now, it's just trading sideways, not really doing too much. If it keeps this up, the market could still hold up. The VIX, nice pump. It's been on a bit of a downtrend. Overall, the VIX looks to me like it might try to retest major support around this 22.64 level or very close to it. If that doesn't hold, we could get back to 20 flat. That could be bullish for the markets, but we first have to wait for PPI first. All right. Apple, let me see if I can do Apple. All right, it's working now. So for Apple, if it breaks 153, expect it to hit 154.5, then 156.3. We could actually start retesting a lot of those levels. If you're bearish, watch out for 150 flat. If that fails, there's 147 followed by the gap fill at 146, then the 0.382 retracement at 145. There's both a bullish and bearish case. If Apple declines and comes down first to fill the gap, the whole market might drag down first, and then we could get a bounce off the 0.382 support. That's also very possible. But we just have to wait and see what PPI tells us first. I can't really predict it, which is why I can't give you guys a perfect prediction, but I can tell you what the technicals were telling us. Finally, that's basically what I have for this video. I just want everyone to be very cautious and very careful in the morning. PPI is going to be big. And with that said, I want to thank everyone for listening. The last one I'm going to talk about is NVIDIA. NVIDIA, I know I keep saying that wrong. This is holding up pretty well so far, but there is this gap down here in the 230 zone. If it fails, this thing might come all the way down to these very lower levels, right? If it does not hold this 235 zone, this is where support is, where the 0.236 retracement line is. Resistance is going to be around 244, right? Depending on PPI. My guess was we'd likely retest either gap support, maybe come a little lower first and then get a bounce. We could even fill this gap and then bounce. It's got to be one of those two most likely. And I think it might hold up for another couple of days before a big move comes for next week. My guess is the market's going to most likely, if it does pull back a bit, we're likely going to see the market hold up for the remainder of the week anyways, maybe try to rally at the end of the week, maybe. And then we might see more downside next week because of quadruple witching and other factors. So thank you for listening. Have a great day, guys. I'm hoping I'm able to upload this video. If I can, I'm going to be very happy. Let's hope I'm able to do it. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. The market to the moon, because the long-term future is still incredibly bright. And peace out.